4,000 written messages survive from this city. In 100 years, nobody has read a single one. We can read Egyptian. We can read Sumerian. We cannot read this. The city is called Mohenjo-daro. Mohenjo-daro. It sits on the floodplain of the Indus River in the province of Sindh, in southern Pakistan. The planned city was laid out around 2,500 years before the Common Era, on ground people may already have been living on for centuries. Its people built in fired brick, cut to a standard. They set their streets on a grid. They ran covered sewers beneath the pavement and sank more than 700 wells inside the city. And they wrote, on stone seals, on copper tablets, on pottery, on ivory rods. Short lines of signs, a fish, a jar, a comb, a figure with horns, pressed into stone the size of a postage stamp. Roughly 4,000 of those inscribed objects have now been recovered. Not one of them has been deciphered. Not partially, not provisionally, not one. Egypt left us the Rosetta Stone. Mesopotamia left us bilingual tablets and king lists. The Indus left us 4,000 messages, averaging 5 signs each, and nothing on earth to compare them to. So we know how these people bathed. We know how they drained their streets. We know they weighed their goods to a fraction of a gram. We do not know what they called themselves. We do not know what they called this city. We cannot name one single person who ever lived here. Not because they left no record, because they left one, and we cannot open it. Around 1920, an officer of the Archaeological Survey of India named Rakhaldas Banerjee rode into the dry country of Sindh to record a ruin. On the crown of a low mound stood the broken drum of a Buddhist stupa, perhaps 1,500 years old. That is what he had come for. The people nearby had a name for it, Mohenjo-daro, Mound of the Dead Men. Banerjee picked up a flint scraper. It was wrong, not by a century, by millennia. So he dug beneath the stupa. He found brick. Under the brick, walls. Under the walls, a street. And under that street, another street. The mound was not a hill with a monument on it. The mound was a city, and the monument was the last thing anyone had bothered to build on top of it. 400 miles north, at a place called Harappa, the same thing was happening, and there had been a warning nobody heeded. In 1875, Alexander Cunningham published a small carved seal from Harappa, a one-horned animal, and above it a line of signs in a script he did not recognize. He assumed it was foreign and set it aside. On the 20th of September, 1924, John Marshall, the Director General of the survey, published an article in the Illustrated London News. His article was headed First Light on a Long-Forgotten Civilization. Marshall did something unusual in it. He admitted he did not know how old any of this was and asked his readers for help. They answered within weeks, pointing to close parallels between the Indus seals and objects already found in datable levels in Mesopotamia. An entire civilization, unknown that summer, was suddenly older than almost everything the subcontinent had a written history for, and the man who first cut into it never got to tell the story. Banerjee's own report went unpublished until 1984. He died in 1930 at 45. What Marshall's teams uncovered did not look like the beginning of urban life. It looked like the middle of it. The site covers roughly 250 hectares, perhaps 300, counting what is still buried. It is one of the largest cities of the Bronze Age on Earth. It is built in 2 parts, a raised western mound the excavators called the Citadel, and east of it, across the plain, the lower city. Walk it, and the first thing that stops you is the geometry. The main streets run north-south and east-west, dividing the lower city into blocks. Lanes branch off at right angles. This is not a town that grew. It is a town that was set out. The bricks are the second thing. Fired, not sun-dried, cut to a fixed proportion, 1 to 2 to 4. Thickness, width, length, and not only here, the same proportion turns up at Harappa, 600 kilometers away. Then the water. More than 700 wells were sunk inside the city, by the archaeologist Michael Jansen's estimate, roughly 1 for every 3 houses. Ordinary homes had bathing floors and drains that carried waste out into covered channels beneath the street. 4,500 years ago, in a city on the Indus, the sewers ran under the road. On the citadel stands the building that became the emblem of the whole civilization. A sunken brick tank, 12 meters long, 7 wide, just under 2.5 deep. Steps at either end, the floor sealed with bitumen to hold water. We call it the Great Bath because we have no idea what its builders called it or what they did in it. Then the weights. Small cubes of chert cut to a system that doubles. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. The most common weighs about 13.7 grams. The same standard turns up 1,000 kilometers away. How many people lived here is genuinely unsettled. Estimates for the peak run from about 20,000 to about 40,000. And the scholars who publish them are the first to say the basis is weak. Now stand in the middle of all that order and look for the person in charge. You won't find one. No palace has been identified at Mohenjo-daro, no throne room, no royal tomb packed with gold, no temple that everyone agrees is a temple, no ruler receiving tribute, no king trampling his enemies, no boast, no name. The archaeologist Gregory Possehl put it plainly in 2002. There are, he wrote, no clear signs of kingship in the form of sculpture or palaces, and no evidence for a state bureaucracy or a state religion. Compare the neighbors. Egypt buried its pharaohs under mountains of stone and wrote their names on everything they touched. Sumer raised ziggurats and kept king lists reaching back into legend. This civilization did neither. There is one famous exception, and it is not what it looks like. A stone bust, 17.5 centimeters high, recovered here in the 1920s. A bearded man in a patterned shawl, eyes half closed, a band around his head. You have seen him. He is on the textbook covers. He is called the Priest King. That name is not a finding. Marshall called him a king priest. The archaeologist Mortimer Wheeler later flipped the words. Both were reasoning by analogy with Sumer, because Sumer was the only model they had. We do not know whether he is a ruler, a god, or nobody at all. And yet the control is everywhere. Bricks to a ratio, weights to a fraction of a gram, streets on a grid, across a territory more than 1,000 kilometers wide. Something was organizing this. Something was counting. Over 60% of the seals from Mohenjo-daro carry the same one-horned animal. The signs above it come from a set of roughly 400 by the most widely used count. Other tallies run higher. They read right to left, worked out from the way signs crowd at the left-hand edge. And they are short, painfully short. Something was being administered. Somewhere in those 4,000 inscriptions may be the answer to who ran this city. The archives survived. We simply cannot open the door. Which brings us to what happened to them, and the two stories told about it. The first came from Mortimer Wheeler in 1947. Excavators had recovered around 37 skeletons at Mohenjo-daro, some sprawled in lanes and doorways. Wheeler read them as the last defenders of a city stormed by invaders. Indra, the Vedic war god, he wrote, stood accused. In 1964, the archaeologist George Dales went back through the excavation records and published The Mythical Massacre at Mohenjo-daro. The 37 bodies were not a scene. They were a total. Everything recovered across 9 seasons of digging in a city 3 miles around, from different areas and different levels, separated by generations. Not one lay inside the fortified citadel where a last stand would have happened. No destruction layer, no burning, no armor, no weapons, no fallen warriors. Indra and the barbarian hordes, Dales wrote, are exonerated. The second story is louder, and it is false. In 1979, David Davenport and Ettore Vincenti published a book in Italy claiming Mohenjo-daro had been destroyed by an ancient nuclear explosion. Vitrified stone, a blast epicenter. The radioactive skeletons were bolted on later, by other writers, from a misread study of a bone that was Egyptian. None of it is in the excavation record. Marshall's report of 1931 does not describe a vitrified layer or an epicenter. Ernest Mackay's does not. Dales did not find one. and the bodies were never shown to be contemporaneous in the first place. The evidence-based answer is quieter and much stranger. In 2012, a team led by Liviu Giosan mapped the rivers of the Harappan world for the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. The rivers watering the eastern half of that world, they found, were monsoon-fed, not glacier-fed. When the monsoon weakened, they turned seasonal, and then to sand. From about 3,900 years ago, the archaeology changes. In the west, settlement numbers collapse. In the east, toward wetter monsoon country, the number of sites explodes. But the sites are small. Nobody sacked Mohenjo-daro. The cities came apart into villages and walked east. So the city is explained, more or less. The writing is not. 3 serious positions have been at war over it for decades. The Finnish scholar Asko Parpola has argued for 50 years that the language beneath the script is Dravidian, the family that includes Tamil. His strongest circumstantial support is still alive. Bruhui, a Dravidian language spoken today in Balochistan, Balochistan, hundreds of miles from any other Dravidian speaker. Others read an early Indo-Aryan language, an ancestor of Sanskrit, proposed at the very first attempt on a seal in the 1870s, and defended still. And in 2004, Steve Farmer, Richard Sproat, and Michael Witzel argued both camps are chasing nothing. The Indus signs, they said, are not writing at all. Across 600 years of use, the text never grew longer, and real writing systems do. 5 years later in Science, Rajesh Rao and colleagues answered with statistics. They measured how predictable each sign was from the one before it. The pattern sat close to natural language and far from DNA, music, or code. Evidence for the linguistic reading, they said, not proof. Without a decipherment, nobody can have proof. And then, from a completely different direction, we finally heard something. In 2019, a team led by Vasant Shinde and Vagish Narasimhan, published a genome from Rakhigarhi, a Harappan city in northern India. They powdered 61 samples from its cemetery. 60 gave nothing. The climate is too hot for ancient DNA. One worked. A woman buried 4,500 years ago with grave goods, her head to the north, the way the Harappans laid out their dead. 2 ancestries met in her, an Iranian-related lineage that branched off before farming began, and the ancient hunter-gatherers of South Asia. No steppe pastoralist ancestry, none from the farmers of the Iranian plateau. She was not an arrival, and that mixture is today the single largest component of ancestry in most people living in South Asia. We cannot read one word this woman wrote. We have read her genome, and 4,500 years on, the people who carry that ancestry number in the hundreds of millions. They were never lost. They have only ever been silent. Start with the simplest thing we don't have, the name. Mohenjo-daro is a modern Sindhi phrase, mound of the dead men. Whatever the people who built it called their city has never been recovered. The scholar Iravatham Mahadevan, proposed reading one seal as Kukutarma, the city of the cockerel. A beautiful idea, resting entirely on an unconfirmed decipherment, a name inside a guess. We do not know how the city was governed, or whether governed is even the right word. We do not know what the Great Bath was for, and we have barely looked. Only about 1/10 of the site has ever been excavated. For 60 years, that was deliberate. Everything already exposed is being destroyed by salt drawn out of the groundwater, and brick that lay safely buried for 4,500 years falls apart within seasons of being uncovered. In 2012, Pakistani archaeologists warned the site could be gone by 2030. Then, in 2025, they dug anyway. A joint Pakistani-American team reopened ground west of the Stupa Mound. 5 new radiocarbon dates put the defensive wall at 2,700 years before the Common Era, centuries earlier than confirmed. Pottery beneath it pushed the story further, toward a Khat DG phase settlement as early as 3,300 years before the Common Era. Though that number rests on the pottery's style, not on radiocarbon. 60 years of not digging, and the first trench moved the date. The deepest levels lie below the modern water table, never seen by anyone alive. And the writing is still out there, waiting. In January 2025, at the centenary of Marshall's announcement, the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu offered $1 million to anyone who produces a verified decipherment of the Indus script. It has not been claimed. Rajesh Rao, who ran the entropy study, still gets weekly emails from people certain they have solved it. 4,000 messages stay closed. It is not for lack of anyone trying. Mohenjo-daro has given up its streets, its wells, its drains, and its bath. It has not given up its voice. 4,000 messages, 5 signs each on average. Everything that city chose to write down is sitting in museum cases right now, in perfect condition, in a language nobody can prove has a living relative. Some cities are lost because nobody can find them. This one we found a century ago. We have walked its lanes, counted its wells, photographed every seal, and the one thing it made to be read is the one thing we cannot read. Buried worlds. Next time, Sanxingdui, Sanxingdui. In 1986, workers digging clay for a brick factory in Sichuan, China, broke into a pit filled with towering bronze masts with impossible protruding eyes. A civilization that left no writing anyone can read, and that no Chinese history describes. Sanxingdui.